There are 6 trigonometric functions. They are the sine function, which is abbreviated SIN, and since it is a function, much like a function like f of x, where we have the name of the function, and then we identify the independent variable, then we also have the same with the trig functions. The name of the function, and then identify the independent variable. Now, the independent variable is going to be an angle. And we frequently use Greek letters in order to symbolize these angles. And very frequently, the letter theta is used. The next that is usually listed would be the cosine of theta. Then the tangent of theta, the cotangent of theta, the secant of theta, and the cosecant of theta. Now, as with any function then, this function would be defined in some way. Like, for instance, a linear function would be defined by its slope and its y-intercept. Trig functions are defined by the ratio that is associated with each of the functions. When we have right triangles, as with these two triangles, where we have a right angle, then theta would be one of the other angles. Like, for instance, it might be this angle. Notice that relative to this angle, this side is opposite, and this side would be adjacent, and this side would be the hypotenuse. The sine function is defined by the ratio opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine function is defined by the ratio adjacent over hypotenuse. The tangent function is defined by the ratio opposite over adjacent. Again, these opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse sides are defined relative to the angle theta. If we designate this angle as theta, then this side would be the opposite side, this side would be the adjacent side, and this side would be the hypotenuse. The cotangent function is defined as the adjacent side divided by the opposite side. The secant is the hypotenuse over the adjacent, and the cosecant is the hypotenuse over the opposite side. Now let's notice some things here. Once we have defined the first three, the sine, the cosine, and the tangent, then the remaining functions, cotangent, secant, and cosecant, are just inversions of the first three. For instance, the cotangent of theta is just the tangent flipped over. So rather than opposite over adjacent, it's adjacent over opposite. And then we work our way back up the list. The secant of theta is the inversion of the cosine. The cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. The secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. And then finally, if we take and invert the sine ratio, opposite over hypotenuse, we wind up with hypotenuse over opposite for the cosecant. Some things that we might notice about this are that then the cotangent of theta can be expressed as 1 over the tangent of theta. The secant of theta can be expressed as 1 over the cosine of theta. And the cosecant of theta can be expressed as 1 over the sine of theta.